When I say Raspberry Pi, do you think about the food or the single board computer called Raspberry Pi? If you're watching this video, hopefully you're interested in learning more about getting started with a Raspberry Pi, the computer. But if you're newbie, where do you start? Hi, I'm Caroline Dunn, and I produce weekly tech videos in IoT and voice. If your quest is to get more tech savvy, I'll give you the first 5 steps to getting started with the Raspberry Pi. Just to be clear, this is not a cooking video. I'm talking about the single board computer called the Raspberry Pi and not your dessert. Now let's get started. As someone who posts weekly tech videos, one of the most common questions I get is, how do I get started learning about technology? Honestly, that's a pretty broad question, but the low cost of a Raspberry Pi computer has put computing in reach for more people than ever before. In this video, I'll give you 5 steps to getting started with the Raspberry Pi and provide links to some free resources in the description field below. Step 1. Purchase or borrow a Raspberry Pi. You can easily get a starter kit for Raspberry Pi on Amazon. I recommend starting with the Raspberry Pi 3 or a 4. I'll provide a few links of the kits that I like. Step 2, you'll need to set up your Raspberry Pi with a mouse, keyboard, monitor, and the Raspberry Pi operating system on a microSD card. I'll link over to a setup video on my channel as well as resources from the official Raspberry Pi organization. Step 3, the Raspberry Pi is a great tool to learn coding, and a great programming language for beginners is Python. In this step, I'll recommend this tutorial for coding your first Python script. Step 4, now comes the fun part. Let's add LEDs and buttons to our Raspberry Pi with another tutorial. And step 5, this is probably my personal favorite, adding a camera to your Raspberry Pi. There are several Raspberry Pi cameras to choose from. And those are my first 5 steps to getting started with the Raspberry Pi. For something more comprehensive, the Raspberry Pi Foundation offers a free PDF download of their beginner's guide, which I will also link to below. I wish you success in getting started with the Raspberry Pi. I have over 50 videos on this channel alone with Raspberry Pi project tutorials. Please check it out.